All right, people, I believe we are live. Minor technical difficulties here in the brand spanking new studio. We're Google live streaming, and across from me, across the pond, I've got Carl Benjamin, a.k.a. Sargon of Akkad. Carl, how are you?
Very glad to finally have it all working. How are you doing?
I'm good. I have to say, you're a very patient person because when the stream went down, you're very calm. Are you on the drugs?
No, I'm just used to Google Hangouts.
Once we get the studio fully going, we have some like fancy TriCaster stuff we won't have to do it through Hangouts. So we're doing the best we can in this crazy time. How do you like our sort of well, this is the new set, and we faked it a little to look like there's just some stuff going on. How does that look to you?
It looks in progress.
In progress, exactly. All right. There's a ton I want to talk to you about, and. Sure. You know, when we did this, I had you on my show, I think a little over a year ago now. I said to you that when I was sort of having my kind of awakening about what was going on with the left, and that I felt that liberals were no longer liberal, they were becoming illiberal, and progressives were becoming regressives. When I started tweeting about this stuff and sort of awakening to it, everybody online on Twitter and on Facebook was saying, Sargon of Akkad's the guy you have to talk to. This is what he's been talking about and all that stuff. So for the people that don't know who you are, first, just tell me a little bit about yourself privately, and then sort of when you woke up to what you now see as a big problem on the left.
There are people who don't know who I am. I'd like to meet them.
For the 3 or 4 people who just got the internet this week, you know.
I only say that, but I've actually had people in real life say, my friend's a really big fan of yours. And I was thinking, oh my God, you know, that's worrying, isn't it? Like, you know,
but, yeah, it's like you just sit in a little room and you talk, and then holy cow, people are watching.
I know. Yeah, I guess it was about 3 years ago now. Well, I mean, it must have been before that, but in the news, I just kept seeing things that were just objectionable. And normally these objectionable things would be coming from the right, but this was coming from the left, and it was coming from people who I thought should know better, and from people who had a great deal of influence, and worked at mainstream media, like newspapers and television outlets and stuff like this. And I'm sat there thinking, why are they doing all this? Why are they going so far outside of the bounds of what you would think is an appropriate position? You know, I mean,
so give me an example of something that you saw that you were like, wait a minit, what's happening here?
God, this is years ago now. I can't even remember. I can barely remember what I saw last week.
All right. Well, okay. So without giving
specifics.
Yeah.
Sorry,
all right. So forgetting the specifics then. Yeah. Give me your liberal cred, because one of the things that I see pop up sometimes is that for those of us that are on the left that criticize the left, and as I say all the time, there's a zillion of us that criticize the right. I criticize the right too, but yes, I focus on the left because I want my team to be better. Can you give me some of your liberal credentials so that people will go, oh, he actually is a liberal or a classical liberal? What do you even consider yourself?
I do consider myself to be a classical liberal. I am very concerned that all people be treated the same in the eyes of the law. That's one thing that really concerns me. I mean, liberalism springs from individual rights, and the very idea of group rights is just the complete opposite of what they're trying to achieve. In fact, that was the thing that liberalism was really trying to defeat. If you have a system of universal rights, and then you give a certain group a certain number of rights that the other people don't have, A, not only is that obviously by default not universal, but B, it creates a group of people who have different rules to the rest of you. How is that any different to an aristocracy? That's I just can't get over that. That is the fundamental point of why I dislike group rights. And any liberal should be against group rights, whereas progressives seem remarkably in favor of group rights. And I'm just in awe that they don't seem to understand that that's an anti-liberal position to hold. You know, when they say, okay, well, we want this for black people, we want this for women, you know, quotas or anything of the sort. It's like, no, you know, we're all equals. We're all going to be treated as equals under the law, and we're going to have no special favors, because in what world does being black or a woman or any other kind of minority category inform you really about that person? Mm-hmm. You can't ever say, well, he's black, therefore, and they're a woman, therefore. You know, you can never tell anything about anyone's kind of personality or anything like that. or their character or their achievements or their, anything. And so it just really drives me crazy when I guess it was, I mean, looking back, I guess it was the increasing encroachment of identity politics into the left, and not even encroachment, just this sort of steamrolling of the left from identity politics. It's been infuriating because it's inherently chauvinistic. It drives me crazy. It's like, okay, so, I mean, if we take it like an example, like violence against women, you think, oh my God, that's terrible. Domestic violence against women. That's awful. And then you look at the statistics, 40% of domestic violence is against men. So if you're going to say, right, okay, we're concerned with violence against women, you are implicitly saying you're not caring about violence against men. And it's not even the fact that violence is going on that's really the problem. It's the fact that women are suffering as a group rather than individuals, whoever's suffering from violence, because everyone suffers from violence. When someone has something done to them, they suffer. I don't think we should really even be considering who suffers more. We've got systems in place that say, right, okay, you don't abuse each other. If someone's been the recipient of abuse, why does it matter what their characteristics are? Why does that matter?
Right. So basically, as a classical liberal, you believe in individual liberty. You believe in the individual versus the collective. You want everyone to be treated equally. Now, I try my best, and I probably fail at this all the time, but I try not to impugn the motivations of the progressives. Now, obviously, I think the progressives have lost their mind, hence they've gone from progressive to regressive. But do you believe that they knowingly are doing something bad? Like, it's hard to say, and I know that goes from, you've got the leaders of the movement versus the average. A lot of these ideas sound good to kids, which is why socialism suddenly sounds good to kids, even though we know it's never done any good anywhere. But what do you think about the motivations of these people? Because a lot of them, they say, well, we want minorities to be treated equal, so we should have quotas. Now, I get why that doesn't really work in reality, of course, but that concept.
Well, we want minorities to be treated equally, then quotas. I mean, that's not an equal treatment unless you're going to have a quota of white people. They have this in the British Broadcasting Corporation in Britain, right? Where they will literally advertise jobs and say, this is open to non-whites. They call them Black, Asian, or minority ethnic in Britain. But basically, they just mean non-white. And it's not, I mean, if it was for, say, like a television program or something that was a period piece or something like that, set in Africa or something, I would say, okay, of course you're not going to have, white people in pre-colonial Africa. But when it's for, like, a research position, like an 18 grand a year research position, why on earth can you justify saying, well, we just don't want white people for that? And it's just crazy. It's like, you can't do that. What was the first part of the question again? Sorry.
Well, do you think they all sort of know this? Like,
oh, right.
Like, we know that it's bad. We know that it's obviously bad, and that's why I'm always for the individual. I would be for what Martin Luther King said: don't judge someone by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. But do you think that all of the people that we're railing against all the time, do you think they fully get it?
No. It is a lot like socialism, as you say. A lot of it sounds good on paper. And this draws a lot of people in because it's always pitched as a moral attitude. This is the good thing to do. And, being for individual liberty is, I'm not going to say a bad thing because they never frame it in those terms, because I don't think they really think deep enough to categorize it like that. But
well, they tell you you're selfish, right? If you're for individualism, it somehow sounds selfish, even though I would argue that you should do what is good for you, and then you might do also what's good for your family and your extended community and your local community and all that.
It's actually more simple than that. If you're arguing for group rights, you're arguing for rights that I don't get to have. I can't imagine anything more selfish than that. I'm arguing for rights everyone has. There's nothing more altruistic than that, as far as I can think of. It's just, by definition, that can't be the selfish position. If you're saying that, other people must have something I can't have, that's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. But no, I don't think they're all bad people or anything like that. And in fact, the majority of people are well-meaning, without a doubt. These are the people who they log on, they watch certain online news venues, and they think, I agree, of course, and right, and then they just carry on with their day, and they don't really think about it. But there are definitely people who are, I don't know what you call them, thought leaders or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
who, I mean, there are definitely certain individuals who are doing what they're doing willfully, and they're pushing things for specific agendas. I mean, there are some people. I mean, Guardian author Jessica Valenti is just, she's just, I mean, she can't possibly think that she's doing something altruistically, and if she does, that just speaks more to her mental state than anything. When, I mean, she actually, in an article, she actually called just outright for men to be paid less money than women on the basis that they're men, as a solution to closing the wage gap. In the article, she got informed by a lawyer that that would in fact be illegal, because we have laws to say that you can't pay people differently based on their gender. And all she was like, well, bummer. I mean, they were her literal words in the article. It's like, this person's a lunatic. Why does she have a job at the Guardian? I mean, don't get me wrong, that's actually the wrong question to ask. Of course she has.
Of course, yeah. Come on now.
Yeah. But you see, I come from a time when from the 90s, when the Guardian was a respectable paper, and they didn't push this sort of to the level they do now. But what are you going to do? But yeah, so I don't know necessarily, but there are definitely certain individuals who are using social justice advocacy and sort of the extreme progressivism as a cover for their own bad actions, because this is what drives me crazy about it the most, is that it's so collectivist. It's lost sight of the individual. Look at their definition of racism, for example, right? So if they say that racism isn't just prejudice based on race, which is the definition everyone else uses, you're being prejudiced with this person. Why? Because he's black. That's racism. Well, if they then redefine racism to mean systemic oppression or prejudice based on race, or oppression, whichever one they want to use, then an individual can never be accused of being racist, because that individual is not the organization. I mean, at best, you could say a representative of an organization could be a racist, because he represents that organization in an official capacity. But otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. And their mathematics is terrible as well. I mean, I'm terrible at maths as well, but even I know that if racism is power plus prejudice, if power is 0, it's just racism is prejudice.
Right.
From a mathematics point of view, even I know this. If they had any brains between them, they'd have gone, racism is power times prejudice.
But so is that the issue, though? Is that the issue, that it really, in a way, it's sort of a brain power issue? Because if you were to think a lot of this stuff through, if you were to think what being a human is all about, how government should treat us, how we should treat our neighbor and all of that, none of it really makes sense, but it just kind of sounds good, which goes to, someone like Ben Shapiro always says, it's feelings over facts, right? And that it all kind of feels good. And I know even in my personal life now, even though most people know my opinions on things, when I'll meet someone new and I'll talk about some stuff and they feel a lot of this bullshit, when I start talking to them about it, I can see it's like in a personal affront. It doesn't become a political conversation. It's as if I'm just attacking the person. And that's a really dangerous place to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, this disregard for the individual it permeates the whole ideology. And I mean, I read an article today, in fact, where there was a woman talking about how her ex-boyfriend had gone to a Black Lives Matter protest after dedicating himself to being a full-time social justice activist. And he had been, manhandled by the cops, and they pushed him onto the floor. And I swear she wrote this. She said, I wasn't worried for his safety, because the cops usually, something that killed more black people more often than white people. And so she didn't have a fear for his safety. And so, yeah, but what if that is a psychotic cop and he's really pissed off with that guy and he just pulls out his gun and shoots him? And you'd be like, well, I mean, they don't usually do that. It wouldn't change anything. The guy's still dead.
Right, and they also shoot plenty of white people too.
Yeah, well, per capita they shoot more white people than black people. Per capita, sorry. In total, in aggregate, they shoot more white people than black people. It's just per capita, it's disproportionately black. But I imagine that's probably something to do with crime rates.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
All right, so
this isn't to exonerate the police though either, because the US police definitely have in certain departments are definitely overbearing and authoritarian. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I wouldn't want to get into a tussle with the LA cops. I would be very respectful and I would do exactly what they said when they said it, just because. But just to condemn police in general, and again, it's collective blame and collective guilt and individual blame. They want to if something happens with them, like with Black Lives Matter and Trevor Noah with Tommy Lara the other day, that interview infuriated me. I was literally, I got to the point where I was just, I wanted to ask, what does Black Lives Matter have to do for you to stop supporting them, Trevor? They've murdered cops, they chant for dead cops all the time, they riot, they loot, they burn, they beat people based on there are members who beat people on the racial status. So, what has to happen for him to go, okay, maybe this has gone too far? But he just wants to, whimsy it away, going, well, that's just those people, but the grand narrative of Black Lives Matter isn't about that. It's like, well, it doesn't matter, does it?
Well, it's almost like you're kind of caught at that point in your collectivist bubble, right? You're caught between, well, we're doing something that's collectivist. Now we've got some bad apples here, but we don't want to be judged as a collective, but it's your rules.
Oh, absolutely. But the second a white man does something, then it's all white men. If you're a white man, you're oppressing women, you're oppressing black people, you're oppressing gays. You are doing all of this stuff, even if you as an individual aren't doing it, because they are interested in the group and not the individual. And it's like, look, you want to have your cake and eat it too. You can either have, I am responsible, and then in turn, Black Lives Matter is responsible for the crimes members of Black Lives Matter commit, or those individuals are responsible for that, and I, as an individual, am responsible for what I do, and I'm responsible for my slaves. Okay. But
I got you.
Yeah. So it's just one of these things where it's intellectual laziness is really what I think it is, and it just becomes. There's a parody series on YouTube called Regressives, and the tagline is "Think regressive." I can't remember. It's easier or something. It's just easier, and it really is. It's a lot easier to say, "Well, this is white people's fault," or "This is men's fault," or "This is whoever." It's like that doesn't answer anything, and that's not actionable in any way. What do you think we're going to do? Start, well, as Jessica Valenti wanted, just demoting men's pay, garnishing men's pay on the basis that they're men? It's the most illiberal thing I can imagine, and it's this kind of desire for forced equality I find baffling, because in a free society, the last thing you would expect to see is sort of a perfect equality of anything anywhere. You would expect to see lots of individual people all progressing through this society at different rates because they've got different interests, different abilities, they come from different backgrounds, they want to do different things. You would never expect to see like 50% men, 50% women as CEOs. Why? Why would that happen? These people have taken they've made different life choices to arrive at the position that they're at. There is absolutely no rational reason to expect it to be 50-50. And I'm still waiting for the justification to make it 50-50. Why should that happen? Why? For diversity? Well, that's not a good enough reason, I'm afraid. Especially not to... There was an Australian CEO. She was a woman, and she was it CEO or was it the press who were reporting on it? I can't remember exactly who it was, but it was an Australian article I saw. And I'm sure it was a CEO that was being interviewed. And the woman literally said, well, yes, some men are going to have to lose their jobs for diversity. And I was, well, there we go. That's exactly my point. These people who have worked their whole lives, they've done nothing wrong, and they've obviously earned everything they've got, are about to lose it on the basis that they were born wrong. And I can't countenance that. I'm sorry. That's unacceptable, and it has to stop.
I've heard a parallel on that, which is that you'll hear, and I think Oprah said this once, talking about racists, that we just need this older generation to die. And I remember thinking, and you hear this idea a lot, that older Americans are more racist, so we just need them to die. And it's like that's such a dangerous endgame of why progressivism will eventually eat itself, because you always need a new oppression. So one day, even if you've lived your whole life as the most progressive person ever, there may be something that comes down the pike 30 years from now that you're like, you know what, I don't think people should have sex with robots while in pools, but the progressives want it, now they're going to want you dead too. Not that I have a problem with robot water sex, but that's the problem, that it just will eat itself. And it's like,
that's because it's a purity test. The whole damn thing is a purity test. And I feel sorry for those sort of the white progressive college professors who, again, this is another thing that I've seen, a woman professor who's saying that she can't have kids because if she has kids, they'll be white. And she will be contributing to racism because, of course, all white people are racist because we all live in a white supremacist capitalist patriarchy where all white people are privileged and are by virtue of that oppressing non-white people. And it's like, okay. And then, but I love on the same hand that they're like, yeah, and so, you know, I'm actually really pro-immigration. It's like, why? Why would you want to bring non-white people into an oppressive white society? That's the worst thing you can do for them. That is the least humanitarian thing if you're a progressive. It's incredible. There is no internal consistency in their ideology.
It's funny. I was speaking at a high school a couple of weeks ago, and they had, you know, a libertarian and a liberal and an anarchist and a socialist, blah blah. And the socialist, white guy, kept going on and on about the evil male patriarchy and white men have pillaged this and white men have destroyed that. And I literally turned to him on the thing and I said, you know, you're white. So it's like the lack of self-awareness even is just crazy.